With the conclusion of the apparent final arc of Bleach, all things seemed like they were ending with our cast of lovely characters being sent off into the sunset and the world finally being at peace. That was until I read the newest one-shot No Breaths from Hell, which took that very notion and threw it across the room. No Breaths from Hell sets the story up for another fantastic arc, and it drops some world-breaking reveals that will change the future of Bleach moving forward. If you're new to this series, we cover Bleach from a completely blind perspective of never having read the manga or seen the anime. Since starting this journey, I've fallen in love with this dark story, and spoiler alert, No Breaths from Hell continues that very theme. Hell butterflies, hell itself, and the return of a devilish figure. Oh boy, we have a lot to talk about. So if you haven't already, please drop a subscription and sit back and relax, because this is my blind review of Bleach. This chapter truly felt like Kubo at his peak health, without a rush to publish a chapter each and every week. Artistically, he blew my mind with new character designs, incredible paneling, and most of all, this chapter felt like a much more slow-told and fleshed-out story than previous chapters we had towards the end of the final arc. I expected a slice-of-life-esque catch-up with our main cast of characters we've grown to love, but this felt much more like a new beginning than a catch-up, and that excites me beyond belief. There's truly never been a better time to catch up to this beautiful story. The way Kubo handles the dilemma of ending a saga and starting anew, I found to be refreshing, because despite our main characters growing older and having kids, their kids don't take the full spotlight. Ichigo, Rukia, Renji, and the rest of our characters, they're still the focus of our story, with their kids now being mixed into it. And I believe that to be the perfect route Kubo could have taken with this chapter. With the opening sequence of this chapter, there's a monologue and it's not explicit in regards to who's speaking, but it entails a story of two goldfish and that the larger goldfish died. With the death of the larger goldfish, the smaller goldfish that seemed to have stopped growing began to grow once more, and that it was a good thing that the larger one died because it enabled the smaller one to grow. The speech immediately gave me some eerie vibes, and symbolically it made me think with some of the strongest individuals of the story gone, that now the next generation of captains and lieutenants would be indirectly forced to grow in strength themselves. However, due to the particular phrasing of, "it was a good thing that the larger one died," it felt much more ominous, and perhaps the goldfish tale serves more than one meaning. Nonetheless, this opening dialogue wasn't something I expected when reading this chapter. The opening panels are juxtaposed with something entirely wholesome. We see Orihime watching Kazui sleep and thanking Kon for playing with him. I found it adorable how big of a role Kon still plays within the Kurosaki household, now being someone watching over Kazui. Kon, who seemed at first to be a joke character, he stayed within the story for all these years, and props to him for blowing my expectations of his character out of the water. This chapter we find out is set 12 years after the conclusion of the Thousand Year Blood War, and seeing how much our characters have grown is always an emotional element within manga. Often we spend years with our characters, and while growing older ourselves, they stay the same age. And witnessing now our heroes growing up just like us after all this time, it's a reflection into our own lives, that these stories grow with us, and that's one of the most beautiful elements of a story. Kazui is a combination of two very unique parents, one being headstrong and reckless, the other ditzy, warm, and wholesome. Quite a lethal combination that makes his disposition just like Ichigo's, and he does what Ichigo would do, but he does it in a much nicer manner. Kazui in the middle of the night opens up his window and leaves his room despite Kon's attempts to reel him in, and he rejects these attempts in a super friendly way, unlike how his father would likely tell him to piss off. With Kazui jumping out of the window, I was shocked to see him with the full bring of two similarly looking fish that we saw in the beginning of this chapter. I'm not surprised he has such latent ability. After all, he's a combination of essentially everything, just like his dad. Kazui then meets up with a young man crying, and Kazui leads him to a shrine and opens up what seems to be a portal from hell. With 4 hell butterflies coming out of the portal and teeth towards the top of it, it's terrifying as a reader to see a young child, the very child of our protagonist, casually opening a portal to hell like it's nothing. Yet Kazui doesn't seem like he knows where he's sending them. He seems happy. He says that everyone's there. I'm under the impression currently he's being misled in regards to what he's doing, but it's undeniable. Kazui is sending souls to hell. Hell hasn't been touched on for a long point in time within the story, and it's a notion I figured wouldn't get too much exposition after it was initially introduced within chapter 12, but I'm beyond glad it did within this chapter. The hell butterflies have been one of my favorite concepts within Bleach, and it's no coincidence how much we see them this chapter. With us getting caught up to Kazui sending off poor souls to hell, we catch up with Ichika training under Ikkaku, and man, this was funny to see. Ikkaku is really reforming Squad 11's reputation by training the youth, and it's a nice touchback to Ikkaku training Renji long ago. Their interactions were hilarious, and Ichika seems exactly the person I'd picture Renji and Rukia's kid to be. There's also an implication that Ichigo has a crush on Kazui, which again is a really cute concept. We're eventually brought to a new concept through Renji. Well, I should say it's new to us. The Soul Funeral Festival is a festival in which a hollow is captured in the world of the living, and they kill the hollow in front of the captain's grave. This lovely festival invitation is then extended to Ichigo. Ichigo, upon hearing this through a FaceTime of sorts, he echoed the same sentiment as me, that this was in fact a very obscure and unethical tradition. This FaceTime is facilitated through the genius of Urahara, and once more breaking through the manga, and the opening parts of this chapter were such feel-good moments. My god, they now have FaceTime, and it really buttered us up for what's to come. Ichigo on this FaceTime is at Keigo's ramen shop, and Kubo really doesn't miss any details. Long ago there was a conversation that Keigo would be a great restaurant owner, and here we are now with that dream actualized. Seeing Ichigo once more was again amazing, and he clearly had a much better barber than Naruto did. I like his longer hair better, but I don't have any issue with his new look. He looks mature. Rukia then joins his FaceTime call, and I really enjoy her new hairstyle with the side ponytail, along with her yelling at Ichigo for having Orihime do all the household chores. Rukia also comes across as super unfamiliar with technology, and she seems fascinated with TVs. I had always loved the aspect of Rukia being continually amazed by modern technology, and despite the fact that times may change, these dynamics in these characters surely haven't. Speaking of character designs, Mayuri touted a new outfit with beetle horns of sorts, and it's clear that he's Kubo's favorite due to him consistently changing appearances each and every time we see him. In fact, scientists seem to be Kubo's favorites. Mayuri isn't there in person, but he's appearing through a hologram projected by an odd-looking bug, and Rukia in one of her statements says Mayuri's words sound like something he'd say during battle. I've long felt that Mayuri speaks in a way that in general is villainous, and I love our wacky scientist. The information Mayuri delivers is that all lieutenants need to head to the world of the living to capture the hollow for the festival, and one of the new lieutenants who design-wise was incredible is Atao, who's mute. His hairstyle reminds me of Chad's, and his ability seems connected to animals in writing, which is a really unique power Kubo creates. One of Kubo's greatest strengths is character design, and with this chapter he's in his bag with how fantastically designed both old and new characters are. With us brought to the world of the living, it felt like old times with Renji, Rangiku, and Ichigo back together talking. Rangiku didn't get much spotlight in the Thousand Year Blood War, so this interaction felt very much like the Arrancar arc, where she was a central character within the plot, and my god, she looks good as ever. In this dialogue of the trio, we see Ichigo is now a translator, which is a really cool profession for him to have. And despite our characters clearly maturing and growing older, the banter these three possess make it feel like they're teens again. Another new lieutenant is then introduced within Yayahara, who is super incredibly spunky and loud, and she goes so far as to take selfies with the hero of the war within Ichigo. Incredible. Ichigo eavesdropped earlier, and hearing all this news from Mayuri regarding the world of the living, she decides to go join in on the adventures of the world of the living, and we're shown once more hell butterflies. Ichigo then sees a ghoul-like creature around Ichigo and Renji. There's a central theme within this chapter of Ichigo and Kazui having a direct connection to hell, and I'm so excited for what it'll mean moving forward. With Ichigo warning about this hollow-like ghoul, it attacks Renji and Ichigo cuts it down, but not before Kyone gets the Momo treatment with a gruesome hole through her stomach, and it really emphasizes the body horror Kubo loves to draw. These four giant hollows have rings outside of their body, and they're massive and terrifying, and from what started off this chapter as a nice catch-up was now immediately horror. These hollows don't have Ryetsu, which I imagine is the reason they couldn't sense them prior, but it's odd how Ichigo could see them before even the high-class Shinigami could. I'm unsure if this is just coincidental, but Kazui, when opening the portal to hell, there was 4 hell butterflies coming out, and coincidentally, 4 ghoul hollows attack our lieutenants in Ichigo. It could just be mere coincidence regarding this, but maybe Kazui accidentally brought these 4 entities into the real world as indicated by these overlapping numbers. There's then an all-out battle with the lieutenants attacking these Ryetsu-less hollows, and the panels flowed so well together, making it really easy to follow along this fight, and it was super amazing visually. Atao with riding on his Zanpakuto, he summons hawks that eradicate the flesh of the hollows, and Yayahara creates a wolf-like mouth that takes off the head of another hollow. In this fight, I don't believe Yayahara was using her Shikai, it seemed a lot more like a Hado. As well, I love Atao riding on his Zanpakuto due to his mute nature and being unable to speak, and I can't wait to see more of him and whether he can summon different animals as well outside of birds. Both new lieutenants have animal-themed abilities thus far, and I'm all here for it. Of the lieutenants, seeing Akon fight was truly a treat. He's been a lieutenant I've always thoroughly enjoyed, and his attacks felt perfectly science-themed. I'm really glad for this chapter Kubo chooses to have the lieutenants have these intense fights, because in the Thousand Year Blood War, a lot of lieutenants were more on the sidelines and didn't have many fights outside of a select few. The most exciting moment for me, however, was seeing Kira use his Shikai to make himself super heavy and then stepping on a hollow before cutting off his head. That's by far the most unique use of his Shikai I've seen, and I'm thrilled he's still in the story. With what seemed like the end of an odd hollow attack, we see even more hell butterflies in a chain around Renji's ankles. These chains stem from a character I thought we would never see again, Szayelaporro, and he emerges from a portal identical to the kind Kazuya used in the beginning of this chapter, affirming what he opened was indeed a portal to hell. Clearly within the 1,000-year Blood War, Szayelaporro's cameo clearly wasn't a coincidence. Kubo wanted to have him fresh on our minds, and with this new entrance and appearance, I don't think he'll be leaving our minds anytime soon. His design looks crazy. Szayelaporro references Uryu and Mayuri, and it's clear he still remembers everything from his time alive. We learn he's come directly from hell, and his new appearance with the hollow hole on the outside is due to this very fact. That once entering hell, the hole is moved outside of the body, and it really drives home the symbolism of the continual chains and shackles we see when associated with hell this chapter. It's a really important notion that Szayelaporro still has his memory, because it forebodes the return and further development of some deceased individuals we'll get to momentarily. Szayelaporro, in asking Renji who his daughter is, he says that he doesn't have to answer because the Warden of Hell is all-seeing. And this concept of the Warden of Hell watching over the human world in Sarate is a chilling concept we see multiple times throughout this chapter. Renji and Ichigo are thankfully saved by Ichigo from Szayelaporro, who uses chain-like abilities that he seems to have gathered within Hell, and Ichigo seems to now have his previous Shikai as his base sword, as indicated by the cloth on it, and I imagine his current Shikai is his dual blade, and God only knows about his Bankai. I know Kubo couldn't show us Ichigo at full strength right away, but I'm stoked for that eventual reveal as the story arc progresses. Ichigo, despite maturing, is still as punk as ever. He responds to Szayelaporro by asking who the hell he is, and gosh, it felt like Ichigo was right back to who he always was. We're brought briefly to the captains, and a hilarious subtlety Kubo adds is showing the captains that all of them are facing one way, with Shinji being the only one facing the wrong way. Shinji really does everything in reverse. However, the final parts of this chapter are truly ominous. With Will-O-Wisp now surrounding the captains, it fit perfectly the aesthetic to a scary campfire story, as Kirikou speaks of a superstition of Rei being a unit of measurement to represent the amount of spiritual energy within someone. Now usually when someone dies, their body turns to Reishi and returns to the earth. But people grade 3 or higher, which are captain level strength, they can't return to the Earth of Soul Society because it's far too much Ryatsu. That how they return is through the Soul Funeral Festival, but the superstition says grade 3s or higher can't return no matter what. That the Soul Funeral Festival's real purpose is to send the deceased captains down to hell. I had immense chills reading this, coming to the realization that all the powerful captains who lost their lives in the war were sent directly to hell. That for centuries Soul Reapers have sent down their predecessors to the underworld. Not only that, it also fits the abilities of the captains now sent down to hell. Yamamoto with all of his abilities being hell-themed, and Ukitake and Unohana having darker-themed abilities. I imagine it's no coincidence that these three are the ones Kubo decided to have die within the final arc, and subsequently be sent to hell. I can't imagine the heartbreak from Kirikou realizing that both Yamamoto and Ukitake, his closest allies, that he sent them directly to hell. Kirikou has suffered enough emotionally, and now he has to deal with this as well. At the same time of this tragic realization, I was also full of excitement that maybe, just maybe, we could see the notorious original Gote 13 and other characters who never had proper screen time prior to their deaths. Szayelaporro presents a really fascinating concept, that the price to be paid for gaining strength is hell. That is one of my favorite concepts I see within storytelling, that immense strength always comes at a cost, but I've never seen that cost being presented as hell. Szayelaporro informs us that the tremendous Ryatsu of Aizen and Yuha, that it kept the mouth of hell in check, and with their spirit energy gone and so many strong Ryatsus sent down to hell, the mouth of hell began to be forced open from the other side. I imagine due to Aizen being in Muken, that this is the reason his spirit energy disappeared, and with Ukitake now being sent to hell, the balance keeping hell shut is now completely off. Szayelaporro during this speech mentions the unintended tragic actions of Soul Society towards the Blade of Death Unohana and the founder of the Gote Yamamoto. Incredible titles. During the speech behind him, it appears a very similar fish we saw in the beginning, and we see Szayelaporro stabbed through the chest by Divine Vow Ukitake. My god, this was a roller coaster. Although we don't see Ukitake's face, we do see his blade through the gates, and it's big. And Szayelaporro was caught off guard due to Ukitake arriving early to hell. That due to Ichigo possessing his substitute Shinigami badge, and them killing so many ghouls from hell in front of it, that the ritual was complete in sending him to hell. This was an amazing callback to Ukitake creating this badge for Ichigo, and being able to see through this badge even after death, as indicated by the glowing nature of it. The most iconic panel of this chapter comes within Szayelaporro's final words, stating hell has always been nearby. That haven't they ever wondered why the butterflies that guide Soul Reapers have hell in their name? And we see the gates of hell close, with two skeleton-like figures having their ribs resemble a butterfly. Butterflies symbolically have always been within Bleach, from hell butterflies to Aizen's metamorphosis looking like a butterfly, and is such a brilliant display of Kubo always having a plan for his story and thinking so far ahead. Now with the gates of hell seemingly closing, Kazui looks into the sky smiling, and what peers back at him is another pair of eyes, and I imagine them to be the Warden of Hell. I don't want to go so far as to say Kazui is a creepy kid, but he definitely lacks a general fear of things, and there's something regarding him relating directly to the Warden of Hell that really has me unsettled. The aesthetic of the gates is paramount. We first see the gates in chapter 12 of Bleach, and on the gates there's numerous chains and locks across the gate, with both skeletons having one eye each covered. But within this chapter, now both skeletons have their eyes completely uncovered, and now the chains are gone. This attention to detail is incredible. The chains being gone symbolizing the mouth of hell now being opened and no longer restrained, and with now both eyes being uncovered, I speculate that those two eyes belong to the Warden of Hell now being able to gaze upon the world freely. This chapter was a roller coaster, and it was so symbolically phenomenal. With the closing page titled, Hal from the Jaws of Hell arc, we can best believe there will be another arc, and I can't be more excited about it. I absolutely love hell-themed lore and design, so this arc's aesthetic is already 10 out of 10 for me, and it'd be perfect timing for another chapter to come out in October, fitting both the timing of the 1000-Year Blood War anime adaptation and Halloween. The contrast of the title of this chapter with the closing title, it mirrors what exactly happened throughout the 73 pages. No breaths from hell to new breaths from hell. From hell previously being isolated from the realms, now new breaths come directly from hell as the gate is now opened. Regarding the opening dialogue with one fish dying and the weaker fish now growing stronger, a large focus of this chapter is the balance of all the worlds, and with so much of the strong deceased from the realms, then now perhaps hell will grow out of control with these two balancers within Yuha and Aizen gone. It's a terrifying concept that hell is now opening and peering directly into our protagonist's young child, but I can't help but be reminded of Kazui dispelling Yuha's energy. Perhaps part of Yuha's dark powers were absorbed into Kazui, and that this absorption will play a large role in Kazui's development. This very notion of hell makes the concept of death terrifying for those strong, and it makes Yuha's desire to eliminate death even more understandable. If being strong means being sent to hell, then he likely feared the very concept of death. This chapter opens up so many potential amazing fights and development of characters we thought were long gone, and with the shifted focus throughout the chapter, it lets us know that this isn't a Boruto situation. Ichigo and the rest of our main cast aren't going to lose large relevance. I love that within Hell our heroes retain their memory, and seeing Ukitake still acting on behalf of his friends despite being thrown in Hell is truly a badass moment for a captain I've long thought deserved more development. With this chapter, it blew my expectations out of the water, and now the doors are quite literally opened for more incredible hell-themed designs like Xayalopero, and with Kubo now working while healthy and at his own pace, the sky is truly the limit for Bleach moving forward. If you stuck around this long, please do consider dropping a subscription as these videos take a ton of time to create. I can't thank you all enough for your continued support, and I promise content will not be slowing down anytime soon. Similarly to what Rukia said to Ichigo, this isn't goodbye, but see you later. As always, be greedier.